Hollywood has rushed to the defense of James Gunn in the wake of his firing from Disney over his deplorable tweets making light or even endorsing pedophilia. To be clear, he tweeted thousands of times about pedophilia. The defense is actually staggering to witness, and it's coming from people who worked with Gunn on the Guardians films, including Dave Bautista and Chris Pratt, and includes other Hollywood stars like Selma Blair. Why is Hollywood rushing to his defense? The simple answer is that Gunn makes a lot of money for Hollywood, but that answer would be the wrong answer. Let's take a step back for a moment. This is the same Hollywood that blacklists actors for daring to come out as Christians or as political conservatives. Two cases serve as examples. The first is the case of Jim Caviezel, who famously played our Lord Jesus Christ in the Hollywood hit The Passion of the Christ. Caviezel was openly rejected by Hollywood for years after playing Christ. The following interview came from the Christian Post and is revealing. Actor Jim Caviezel opens up about the rejection he faced from Hollywood after his role as Jesus Christ in Mel Gibson's biblical epic The Passion of the Christ. All of a sudden I stopped being one of the 5 most popular actors in the studio, and I hadn't done anything wrong. I just played Jesus, the actor told Polish journalist and film critic Lukasz Adamski in a recent interview. Adding, was I personally affected by this rejection? Well, everyone has their cross to bear. The world changes, but I will not be in this business forever. Neither will the producers from Hollywood. At some point, everyone will have to answer for what they have done. The Passion of the Christ, released in 2004, was a blockbuster success despite its lack of industry support, earning a staggering $612 million worldwide. With a production budget of just $30 million, the commercial success was the highest-grossing faith-based film in history. The film received 3 Oscar nominations at the 77th Academy Awards, but was awarded none. The second case is that of James Woods. Woods, a highly successful Hollywood actor, is openly conservative and is guilty of the thought crime of supporting the President of the United States. As a consequence, Woods was recently let go by his agency and is now functionally unemployable in Hollywood. Let's contrast this to the case of Roman Polanski. Polanski is a celebrated filmmaker who has won several awards, including the Lifetime Achievement Award and Academy Awards for his various works. He's also an admitted child rapist who drugged a 13-year-old girl and sodomized her in his hot tub while Jack Nicholson was present. Again, this is by Polanski's own admission, and he is celebrated to this day by Hollywood. In an interview with the BBC, his victim, Samantha Geyer, gives the shocking details.
You've said of the subsequent process that you got caught up in, if I had to choose between reliving the rape or the grand jury testimony, which you later had to give, I would choose the rape.
Well, right, the rape was 10 minutes. The grand jury testimony was all day and involved my mother, my sister, my boyfriend, my whole family. So it was, and that was just one day of weeks of what I had to go through.
And then, of course, the years as well, I suppose, the effect on your family over the years.
Yes, I think it affected my family even more than it affected me. But, you know, it was quiet for quite a long time after that.
Right. You did say then that if you, later when you were asked about it, if you had a daughter who was raped at 13, you almost questioned whether you would call the police, would you?
I mean, probably, but it would, probably, but I might think about that carefully after my own experience.
Because of what happened afterwards?
Because I wouldn't want to make it worse than just being raped. I wouldn't want to, like, for me, it made it 100 times worse. Well, so I would hesitate and think carefully.
When you look back, what were some of the worst? You mentioned the grand jury testimony, but also this sense, you talk of this sense of what people expected of you. And almost they wanted, there was a sense of disappointment. If only he had hurt me worse in more obvious ways, everything would be better.
It was strange and awful in a lot of ways. It started immediately that night. It's police, the hospital, the police station, next morning the district attorney's office. Then the fact that everyone thought I was lying on top of that. And then in the trying to prove he did it, it was like if there was more proof, if I was more damaged, then we could prove I wasn't lying. So it was a strange thing.
And these were people, of course, who were on your side.
Right, and that came up after time, but, they're on my side, yet wanting to prove something bad happened to me. So it was just really confusing. I was shortly 14. And it was just really confusing to have to go through all that and be forced to do so many things. And I was just so angry about all of it.
Did you feel as if they didn't care that you were hurt, that you were hurt as you were, that you just weren't hurt in the right way?
I didn't think I was hurt. I was just wondering why everybody was continuing to hurt me as some kind of requirement for what I'd already been through.
So the consequences of the rape really, they haven't...
It was bad. I mean, it was really, really bad. I mean, phone rang off the hook. We couldn't leave the house. Everyone was calling me a liar. I mean, it was, and it started the next day. It was awful.
And some of the things that were coming at you, it was presumed that you had asked for it.
It was presumed that I was lying, that I asked for it, that my mother had sold me to him. I mean, every awful thing you could presume was presumed about me and my mother and my family.
And the judge in the case said, what are we dealing with here? What have we got? A mother-daughter hooker team.
Right. The judge said that in the courtroom. So that's what my life was like.
You also talk about the fact that you weren't the kind of victim that people wanted. You didn't behave in the way that they wanted.
That's more later than at the time. I mean, at the time, I was a really angry young girl. So I'm sure I wasn't behaving the way people wanted me to then. But later, people want you to be interesting and damaged and traumatized, and they'd like to exaggerate what happened to you to make it more interesting. So I don't cooperate with that because that's just not who I am. So it's like a disappointment for everyone that I'm fine and I got over it.
Hollywood and the political establishment rushed to Polanski's defense and committed acts of character assassination against her. In the Gunn case, we see similar things happening. One example is Dave Bautista, who called the exposing of Gunn's vile tweets an attack by, quote, cyber Nazis. Aside from Nazi being the most overused term by the left today, dehumanizing people who have serious concerns about a man who makes comments like the ones Gunn made directing children's movies is pretty revealing. Even Ben Shapiro, noted conservative, defended Gunn. Allegedly, Shapiro also deleted over 1,000 of his tweets in the wake of the Gunn firing. That really does make you wonder. So why is Hollywood defending Gunn so strongly? Some would say that it is because Hollywood has a massive pedophile problem and that many actors are in on it. I have no proof of that. Instead, I offer this as a simple explanation. Hollywood is filled with sick people who revel in promoting unfettered sexuality. Hollywood is the prime exporting force for moral degeneracy around the world. To engage in this work requires a social libertarianism that bankrupts the soul to such an extent that the only moral evil these people can speak out against is what they perceive as threats to their moral order, hence the constant attacks on Trump. But why is Shapiro defending Gunn? He released a statement that could be summed up as "my principles." Shapiro's principles don't amount to much if they empower the promotion of moral degeneracy. If Gunn is rehired by Disney, this will just be another step in the direction of furthering the moral decline of America. Period. I know that many people will argue that this infringes upon free speech. I am a free speech absolutist in the understanding of what freedom of speech meant to the founding fathers of the United States. I am an absolutist for free political speech. How raping children is covered by free speech boggles the mind. Then again, many so-called conservatives defend pornography on free speech grounds, which is almost as ludicrous as defending pedophilia. I am no liberal, classical, or otherwise. I am a neo-reactionary on the dissident right, so I have no difficulty saying that Gunn should be fired and investigated for having a long history of making public statements that support pedophilia. This is not the same as publicly criticizing feminists and their culture-destroying projects, or on the flip side, criticizing the President of the United States for whatever issue an individual may have with him. Our culture has adopted such a loose understanding of free speech today that it almost has no meaning anymore, with the only restriction in the U.S. now being yelling fire in a theater or advocating the murder of people. Ultimately, this is an issue of hypocrisy. The same people in the culture that dox people, harass them offline, and get them fired from their jobs for mean tweets are the same people now defending Gunn, Michael Ian Black, and other celebrities who at the very least told thousands of tasteless jokes about pedophilia, if not openly advocating for the vile practice. I am fully in line with those who say that the left should be held to their same standards. But beyond that, this comes back to a very basic problem. Hollywood has had a problem for a long, long time with pedophilia. The problem predates Roman Polanski and has been institutionalized in Hollywood, if Nicholson's nonplussed reaction to seeing a teenage girl drugged and raped in front of him is any indicator. Hollywood pedophilia is #MeToo on steroids and should be treated with extreme hostility by decent people everywhere and should be investigated with prejudice by the government. If you like content that actually respects the traditional teachings of the Catholic Church or are curious about traditional Catholicism and don't want to be bombarded by leftist modernist nonsense, please like this video and subscribe. You can follow me on various social media with links in the description. Dominus Vobiscum.